Hayden, SMU football season recap, 9-4 on the year. SMU football doesn't get it done getting to Charlotte for the ACC championship, but still a lot to be proud of. But of course, a season of what ifs as well.
I think that's the biggest thing is all of the what ifs about the season. I mean, 9-4, yes, but you're 7 points away from really being 12-1. I mean, if for whatever reason that you don't get into the playoff, which obviously if you're sitting at 11-1, you're there in Charlotte, and who knows at that point. So definitely disappointing on that front. But when you look at the positives of going 9-4, it's only the 12th time in SMU history that you've won at least 9 games. I mean, that is something that cannot be taken for granted, especially when SMU is in the caliber of league that is the ACC, where, Billy, I think 2 years ago when we did our projections for where SMU would be, I think before year one in the ACC, I said I think we're going 6-6 or maybe 7-5. And to turn around, go to the playoff, have the great success that you did in 2024, yeah, that spoils you a little bit to where 9-4 to some feels like a disappointment. And I'm going to look at it as glass half full with all of the adversity that you had with Kevin getting hurt and really playing on one leg for that entire season. You're able to go beat Miami. You beat Clemson. I mean, I'm not satisfied with 9-4, but I'm happy, if that makes sense.
I mean, it totally does. It makes sense, and here's why. Like you have a team that was so close on 3 games in particular that you're looking for a bounce here, a bounce there, the other way, and for whatever reason, this team just didn't have that killer instinct in a sense. In key moments this year at a consistent level, right? Like they had the ability to close out Miami, awesome. Louisville, same thing. They beat the brakes off them, but you didn't have that same killer, I almost think, ability in a sense with the team that they had this year, because you couldn't get into some of these situations where you could really affect the quarterback, I think, from the interior of the defensive line. So when they were up big or they were up in some of these games, they couldn't collapse the pocket like they wanted to, I think. And that hurt defensively. And of course, the secondary had struggles, which who would have imagined some of the things in the secondary that would have happened, honestly. And then you have Kevin getting hurt. You had J Hud getting hurt early. You had RJ clearly not 100%. Run game was kind of up and down, trying to figure out who was the hot hand at times. So it wasn't perfect, but here's one thing that I'll say, and it was conveyed to me, by a couple of people that I trust, and they have a good feel for the team, and they have a good feel for the direction of the program and things like that. You always want to have a high floor as a program, and this is where, I mean, truthfully, I kind of got it wrong with Brian Kelly in a sense at LSU. I thought Brian Kelly would always have them winning 9 games minimum and really winning 10 games consistently. Brian Kelly just couldn't win the big game. I thought, okay, he'll just have all these resources. He'll be fine. He'll kind of do what he did at Notre Dame in a sense. And he didn't. I think Rhett Lashley and the staff and where they have this program, and it'll be contingent in 27 and beyond, but getting that quarterback that can be as good as Kevin has been, they're going to always have that floor of a 9-win season. And especially, I think, as the ACC gets into 9 games in the league, that's even better for SMU for obvious reasons. They seem to play better against ACC competition, but you have a team that should be sitting at a 9-win floor. And just talking with a couple of people on staff, they feel like 9 wins, 10 wins next year is kind of that floor again. And how can you argue with that? You could look up at SMU's schedule next year, and we'll do that at a later date. But you can look there right off the bat, and you could say, based on the body of work that SMU's given over the last couple of years in the ACC, okay, Notre Dame, let's just go ahead and say it's a loss. But it's not in Sharpie because of what happened against Miami.
Yeah.
And what happened by them beating Clemson. And a lot of the teams on that schedule for SMU are kind of all over the place. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to get to 9-10 wins again, but that's the life in the Power 4 conference. So to get to 9 wins, and really 8-4 in particular, 8-4 was just gut-wrenching the way it got there, which is what is frustrating for people. But I would take that over, team not showing up for, certain games and being blown out, like a East Carolina 2020. I mean, those two
Thanks.
things. Sorry about it, but like, that's just off the top of my head. So one that is just ingrained in my mind. I don't know. It's you've got to be, as long as the floor is that 9 win, 8 to 9, 8 regular season, but 9 really. That's what you want.
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I
Correct.
mean, ultimately they didn't get it done. Yes, Wake Forest made again for the second
Ugh.
time in 13 months the kick of a lifetime against SMU.
Yeah.
Where it's good by 6 inches, but you don't give up the 15-yard pass the play before. They're not even attempting a field goal.
Yeah.
You look at
And if you
Baylor.
get a face mask call on the drive prior, the game's over.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. So ball's shaped weird. It's not always going to bounce your way. I think in 2024 the ball bounced our way a ton. Maybe it was just, hey, if we got all of them last year, maybe we got none of them this year.
Yep.
Of this team, just in those games that you think about, those 3 losses. Okay, Cal, you can pretty much chalk that one up to just didn't get off the bus. All right, we'll get that out of the way. There's no really one play that kind of stands out in that game to me yet. Baylor, okay, 3 missed field goals. You bench the kicker the next week. You pretty much solved that problem in a way. Right after that, try to nip that in the bud, and then obviously, the Wake Forest game that we just talked about. But I was impressed by a lot of individual efforts that I frankly didn't see coming after the end of 2024 season.
I agree. Yeah.
So
And before we get into those, I want to say, like, when you go kind of piece by piece on this team, outside of really getting to the secondary, you're like, man, how'd this team win 8 games? Like, but in the standpoint of, man, again, the bounces, but they really should have won. They should have gone to the college football playoff. And it hurts. It hurts.
hurts my heart, hurts us,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But I want to talk about my most improved player from 2024 to 2025. And it's probably a guy that you're not anticipating me saying, because he's such a talented athlete, just God given. That's Savion Byrd. I mean, last year, I look at the inconsistency that he played with. It seemed like he was good for a holding and a false start every single game, plus, a sack against TJ Parker. It was a strip sack at that. And there were kind of some of those moments last year where it's just like, man, Savion, if you ever figured it out, you would be such a good player. And then he turned around this year and he dominated some dudes, man. I mean, it was fun watching 54 out there on the edge. And what was encouraging to me is when I was with this staff, just kind of in my downtime from the NFL, hanging out with the offensive line a little bit, Savion was a guy that we talked about as a career left tackle. He can never play anything but left tackle. He's just hardwired to play that position. You saw him this year. He played right tackle. He played some guard at times, where he was versatile. He was a true team player this year. And I'm so happy that he was able to cap his SMU career with a season like he had.
I'm glad you mentioned Savion. He's never ever going to get enough flowers because of he gets out there on the island with some freak shows from time to time. But man, he was able to do just enough to slow down that Miami pass rush, just enough to have a team win against Miami. And Kevin Jennings, he finishes 6th in the country in passing yards. I mean, if you would have told me that before this season, I would have said, okay, SMU's definitely in the college football playoff, number one. But you've got to have an offensive line that can protect. And if you and especially a guy that loses a lot of his mobility, throughout the year, it makes it even more difficult. So good pick there. Most improved for me, I'm gonna go with Brandon Maiazono. I just
Great
think,
pick.
and I mean that, like, just you could have picked either Brandon in a sense, just because they were taking different levels of jumps, right? Like Brandon Booker was coming into his second year of the program. You're sitting there saying, okay, wow, he's able to play a ton of snaps. But his jump up was really solid, but Brandon Maiazono had been here forever and then gets his opportunity and ends up, overtaking Zakai Barker really and getting a stranglehold on that other linebacker spot and playing really, really well. So I go with Brandon Maiazono. You just look back at him and you've got to think that, especially with the injuries early, SMU doesn't SMU doesn't have the season that it has defensively, I think, in terms of stopping the run. And it was kind of like a little up and down early on as he got settled in and as Book got settled in, and they were missing Kilgore and Zakai Barker. But, you look at what they were able to do, stopping the run this year. It's a big part of those linebackers, in particular, Brandon Maiazono.
Biggest surprise. So I'm gonna. This is a new. We didn't do this one last year, but this is a player that coming in probably didn't carry a ton of hype. Is somebody that you just kind of looked at in the transfer portal. Was like, oh, okay, cool. But Ymir Knight to be not only the third leading receiver on this SMU team with 54 receptions, 637 yards, and 5 touchdowns, including a long of 61. He also became a stud punt returner. I mean, having a guy that, one, is brave enough to field some of those punts that would either be corner kicks or, just kind of that feeling of the ball being up in the air for 5 seconds is so scary. And I know this is an offensive lineman talking, but that is so hard for those guys to do at a high level. And did he break a big return this year? No. I think maybe it's coming next year. I mean, if maybe he gets a couple blocks here and there, but ultimately just to have that ability to go out and keep the field position battle swinging in SMU's direction was critical at certain points in the year. And then he goes out and is the Holiday Bowl offensive MVP, where he did enough in a night that in the second half, Kevin Jennings was off. You couldn't really run the ball, and he was able to do a good enough job to get the offense almost willed down the field at times and to be able to keep drives going. So a great year for Ymir Knight. I'm glad to get him back next year as well.
I'm going to go with another guy that I just mentioned early, on in this podcast. I'm going to go with Brandon Booker. I think you look at what he was able to do, as far as tackling, he ends up being he ends up being the number one tackler from the linebacker position, 69 tackles on the year, 3 tackles for loss, had a half sack, had 2 breakups, few quarterback hurries, just somebody that has a whole nother year in the weight room ahead of him that he's going to, it almost looked like he was bulking during the season too, at least to me. I know that sounds strange, but he just felt like he was getting bigger and bigger and more impactful as the season went on. And I've been a huge Brandon Booker fan since his days at DeSoto. I watched him play defensive end, linebacker, safety, just doing all sorts of things for DeSoto. And I said, if there's a guy who just plays football the right way, and really you look back at him, he was trying to go to Stanford and he didn't get in, which is hard to do. It's not a knock on him, and ends up at SMU because of it. What a win. So what a win to see him get into this role this year. And you look at the linebacker core for 2026, because of that development, it completely changed how they're looking at that group. You're looking at next year saying, okay, well, probably obviously you got to retain Kilgore, got to retain Maiazono. There are older guys, they're proven. I guess we'll retain Justin Medlock and Zakai Barker or go out and get somebody proven instead to replace both of them. No, now you go have Brandon Booker, who's, I think, going to have a huge season. If you're looking for a way early bold prediction, he can have like a Rasheem Biles type of season next year for SMU. He was carrying the ball for DeSoto as well. Just making plays on offense. He's that fast. He is such a difference maker. And you didn't even realize it until the end of the season when you look up and who's the top tackler from the linebacker position. I was shocked. So bigger surprise for sure.
That's insane. That's a great pull. I had forgotten about the fact that we kind of lucked into that when he couldn't get into Stanford. But when looking at the linebacker position group, I think overall from a room standpoint was my biggest surprise as well. So I'm with you on that. mean, the mentality that unit brought was something that had been missing from that spot. I mean, yes, there have been great linebackers that have come through SMU, but something about that dog, Brian Bosworth, like whatever you do, I'm the end of the road
Yeah.
for you. And to watch those linebackers go out and just out physical guys. I mean, one of the plays of the year was Miyazono. I mean, just stonewalling him on the goal line and breaking up that pass because we're talking about Miami 27-20 win if they're able to get in the end zone there.
Yeah.